What a thrill it is to be joined by Gaby King Morse, the CEO of the Center for Women in Enterprise. Gaby, this has been a really fun series of conversations we've been having, doing with Wired Magazine, where we've been discussing modern sort of new age problems that organizations are experiencing and the need for solutions to be modern and innovative to match those problems and for the teams to be also modern and innovative. And so probably not everyone is familiar with CWE's mission and maybe the challenge you're facing in executing that mission. So take us and maybe describe that mission and then describe the overarching challenge, the overarching modern business problem that CWE was facing around trust.
You got it. So the Center for Women in Enterprise has been around for almost 27 years. We serve across New England, and our focus is to provide training and technical assistance for women entrepreneurs who see entrepreneurship, launching and growing a business, as a means to economic empowerment. And we work with over 4,500 women a year, a large amount of women, and predominantly low income, and about 35% across our entire footprint are also women of color. And what we know is that the only reason that women are going to come to us to really talk about something very personal, right? It's their own business, their money, right? Which gets mixed into many things. They really needed to trust the Center for Women in Enterprise. They needed to trust an institution where institutions often have left women behind or not provided what they need or not earned that trust. And so if we're going to be able to do our job, women need to see us as a trusted resource, right? And so you could say that over 27 years, women have trusted us. But the question that we asked is, well, who trusts us? And is it the most marginalized? Is it the ones that have really been left behind that trust us? And do we want to take that for granted? So 3 years ago, we did a strategic plan. And the top and most important piece of that plan in terms of our goals was to be the most trusted training and technical assistance organization for women who see entrepreneurship as a means to economic empowerment. Now, what we had no idea about was, how are you going to measure that? How can we even begin to claim to be the most trusted? How do we even know what our baseline is? How do we know who trusts us and who doesn't trust us? The only thing we knew is that trust was critical for us reaching and serving the women we care about.
And so we'll talk about the way in which, or one of the ways in which you, with the support of our team at Deloitte, helped quantify and measure that trust factor going forward. But I double click a little more on, before you had that measurable solution, how did either the absence of trust or less trust than you believe ideal in a relationship between the center and the women it serves, how did that manifest itself?
Well, I mean, it's a great question. I think it's the more observational, right? What we observed was women coming to us after going to other institutions because they felt that those institutions didn't have their back or genuinely understood their needs. We could only imagine then that, well, we better not take that for granted. You just came to us, right? Even women that have MBAs from prestigious colleges came to us to launch their business. And you say, well, why'd you come to us? You have this incredible network, international network. And we heard people say, because I know you have our back. Now that's great, right? There are some communities, and that was a woman of color who does see us as a trusted resource. But then you have the head of the LGBTQ chamber saying, I don't know if the Center for Women Enterprise is a place I should send my, my constituents to. And that's where, that's one of a number of questions where we think we're inclusive. We think we're a trustworthy source. But guess what? We hadn't been intentional enough. We hadn't been clear enough. And we can wait for those one-off conversations, but we know there's other populations and we don't even know who they are, who don't see us as a trusted resource. How do we even begin to identify who they are? So I guess that's what I would say, is that we believe that if we are more intentional about creating trust and understanding who trusts us and who maybe needs more connection from us, that we are then going to attract folks that aren't going anywhere for help. And we want to make sure that they get the support, the training, the technical assistance, the connection to community that they need to launch and successfully grow a business.
Love it. So I'm curious, you embarked on a pretty transformative and unique means, particularly for a nonprofit, to disaggregate the data, to take a measurable, objective, modern approach to measuring trust, and to get underneath the micro segments, the various constituencies that sit underneath the sort of broad cohort of women that you serve. Was there any resistance from within your organization to taking that measurable, modern approach, or was everybody, when you started talking about this, once you had the strategic plan developed, said, absolutely, this measurable approach, this micro segmentation is what we need?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it brings me back to when we began the strategic planning. I think in a lot of women's empowerment organizations, and we're a women's economic empowerment organization, that there has been an elephant in the room, which is important to acknowledge, which is many of these organizations were started and supported and continue to be supported greatly by white women. And they were created when women were considered a minority, right? When there was so much work to be done to make sure that women were given opportunities to have economic resources, empowerment, decision-making, all of those pieces, right? And so in this moment, or, this was pre-pandemic, but really still all the issues that have come up through the pandemic, racial reckoning, all of this is not new. It's just that the pandemic really put a spotlight on this in a powerful way. But we already were starting conversations about, okay, CWE is an economic empowerment organization. Are we leaving anyone behind? And if we can't help all women, are we really helping women? And why I say elephant in the room, it's that women are still fighting, right? We know that women are still fighting, white women too. And if we want to really make sure everyone comes up, we have to be really intentional about the women who are absolutely not getting support. And that's when you really need to start looking at different demographics, different socioeconomic levels, racial identifications, gender identification, and say, if we can really build for all, and that means being really intentional about the ones who are more marginalized than others, we are all going to rise. And so those conversations had to happen. But honestly, once we put the elephant out there and started talking about it, there wasn't any member of our board or the strategic planning committee who weren't all in on this.
Love it. Okay, so you embark on that, you decide to partner with Deloitte and presumably with HX Trust ID as a compelling part of what you and our Deloitte team would do together. Maybe talk about what led to that decision, what was unique about the value proposition and the modern solution that the Deloitte team brought to bear, and then fast forward to what it's actually been like to work with us to bring the platform to life and implement it.
Well, another piece of our strategic plan was a laser commitment to using data. And in talking with Ashley Reichfeld, who is now on our board, but she wasn't when I first met her, of Deloitte, and talking her through our strategic plan, the excitement on her face, I had no idea what she was thinking, but she had already—
I can picture it. I can picture the Ashley smile.
She already saw all of this. And she said, with your dedication to data and your vision of being the most trusted, I think we might have a tool that can help you actually realize this. And she really helped me understand the history of the Net Promoter Score, what worked about it, what didn't work about it. She helped me understand taking trust apart, all the different pieces. The thing I remember most was her talking about how trust is not just that you think someone has your back, right? Because as a nonprofit, usually our clients believe that we're going to do the very best for them that we can. That's usually not the issue. What she clearly articulated is whether you do your work well or not, the perception of a nonprofit is that you're not as competent as a for-profit in getting that done, right? And that was a really interesting thing for me to think about, because there's no reason for that. That's just perception, right? That's just this idea. And so we could start to measure. We have measurements that show that when a woman comes to us and works with us, that her business grows and she hires more people. That's great. But if the next woman walking through the door doesn't think that we can do that, their tendency to come and ask for our support and services is going to be lower. And so we need to work on all of these different levels. So that was just one slicing that she presented to us. And of course, Trust ID goes into much more than that, response rates, cultural competence. There's so many pieces to this. And so when she laid that out there, it just fits so squarely into the top three pieces, three tenets and vision of our strategic plan. We were ready. The organization was ready to take it on because we had already decided that these were our most important goals in the next 3 years. So I hope I answered your question. I'm not sure if I got it all.
No, you did. And maybe close with, and then I'm going to bring Constance into the conversation, but close with, so this partnership with Deloitte and CWE has evolved since those early conversations with Ashley. What's been the experience? How would you describe the experience of partnering together with a common vision? And if it has at all, how is that experience working with Team Deloitte different from other partnerships, consulting relationships that CWE has had in the past?
I guess there's a number of things I love. I've loved working with Deloitte. And honestly, even before I was at CWE, is your people stay. And so what's been really amazing has been working with a consistent team of people, not only that they stay and I get to know them, and so they know me, they know my staff, they know our vision and our values, but they enjoy working with each other, and you can just tell. But the other piece is that then they have referred me internally to people at Deloitte who I worked with when I was at other organizations who are there. And I guess I would say is, I don't have an internal trust ID measure, but I guess the Gaby King Morse trust ID is that I see a lot of trust there. I see a lot of people on your team enjoying themselves, working hard, able to have their own personal vision and drive and adapt that into the work that they're doing with us. But I think, I can only imagine across their other clients. And it's a real pleasure. It's just a real pleasure to work with them.
I love it. And you've hit on something really important, which when I think about modern successful teams, the smiles per capita and the joy per capita factor is often underestimated. And I think the CWE Deloitte partnership is a good example of, you got a lot of people working hard for a really important mission, but they're doing it with a lot of mutual affection and with a lot of joy and fun and kindness that sits behind that. And that's a lot of fuel for a successful team.
Yeah, the last thing I would add, just because you use the word, is joy is one of our values. And just to your point, is there's a lot of important and really hard work to do to increase economic equity. We better have as much fun and connection and joy that we can build and create and find along the way.
Brilliant. All right, I want to bring in Constance Gamache, the Deloitte Corporate Citizenship Lead. And Constance, maybe to start, tell us a bit about your background and some of the things you did prior to your involvement with the Center for Women in Enterprise that made this a great fit for who you are.
Thank you so much, Dan. And I can attest to the smile per capita. Although I'm not able to join by video, hopefully you can see it on my little icon, but I'm smiling from over here. My passion for female entrepreneurship started very early. During my master's program at Brown University, I led a venture capital inclusion lab, which really focused on understanding DEI in the venture capital industry in a data-centric way. And we leveraged that research to determine how to enact more equity in the field. And then I was able to continue a lot of that work when I came to Deloitte and grew up in our consulting practice, and then joined our purpose office. But throughout all of that time, I sought out opportunities to continue this type of work through our pro bono programs and joined the Boston Board of Step Up. For one of my Step Up projects, I was very luckily able to co-author a report alongside Usama Salim, who, as Gabby knows, is part of, I think, our dangerous duo. And we were able to commission a report on female entrepreneurship in Massachusetts. One of the questions that was really at the heart of our research was, what resources are available to female entrepreneurs in the Commonwealth? And to answer that question, we conducted countless interviews with entrepreneurs on the ground. And the resource and organization that we kept hearing over and over again is the most supportive was CWE. So when we had the opportunity to then work with CWE directly on this project, we were all extremely excited, but also really excited to bring that subject matter expertise we had built up through that previous report to inform our work with CWE and the Hicks Trust ID.
Amazing. And clearly part of you being a centerpiece of the team we built. I do think a lot, Constance, about the process of putting together Deloitte teams in partnership with our clients and partners like CWE. You've been doing this a long time. Anything different about the process of composing the Deloitte team to partner with CWE that felt different or particularly impactful relative to things you've done in the past, or that made the team that we formed particularly specialized or ready to help CWE?
Absolutely. This project team, I think the most unique part and one of the most exciting for me was that it was conducted as part of our Step Up portfolio, which as we all know, is our pro bono and skills-based volunteering program for junior practitioners to quote unquote step up, so love the name there, in projects and stretch their skills by working with nonprofits in their local communities. So when we were thinking about staffing on a team perspective, Usama and I not only brought our unique experience from our previous projects on female entrepreneurship, but we're also able to restaff several individuals from the previous project. To Gabby's point about kind of seeing the same faces. But when looking for additional practitioners to staff, we were looking for individuals who were as passionate about CWE's mission as they were skilled in things like data analytics, data visualization, and most importantly, connecting data to the underlying humanistic elements of trust. And then I'll just wrap that up with another shout out to Ashley Reiheld, who was our principal champion and brought her deep subject matter expertise on both the Hicks Trust ID tool, but also CWE itself.
So Constance, I want to pull the thread on, you use the term humanistic. As we talk about modern teams and that ideology, putting people and putting humanity at the center of our problem-solving approach becomes incredibly important. Perhaps even more important as data and technology become so central to the way in which we talk about and understand the circumstances that a particular client or organization is facing. And that certainly is the case here at CWE. So, how, as we've gone about the work with CWE, would you say we put people and probably most importantly, the types of women who are going to benefit from the services and support provided by CWE, how did we put them at the center of the creative problem-solving process?
Absolutely. Well, what I think is so uniquely powerful about the HICS Trust ID tool is that it's able to understand that we show up each day, not as employees or as board members or as donors, but really as human beings making decisions based on intangible emotions and thereby trust. So the tool is able to not only understand that, but then really able to assess trust levels and predict behavior based on those intangibles. So for us, the idea of putting people in the center of our work was inherently built into the foundation of the project itself. What I'll add there, as we always say, people, process, technology. Through our process, we are also able to use surveys, informal interviews, and several open lab-like formats to also empower the stakeholders that we were interested in understanding better to actually actively voice their own experiences.
Brilliant. Okay, so let's close here, and maybe a final question for both Gaby and Constance. And Gaby, we'll start with you, which is, this partnership, this modern team that is comprised by CWE, CWE's board, CWE's constituencies, and Deloitte is just at the start of learning more about trust and learning more about and envisioning the future that can result from this approach. What's next? What's the next evolutionary step for CWE from this modern team and the use of the HX Trust ID platform?
Well, there's two things I think about. First is now we have a real baseline and some real directives, things that we are doing to see if we can increase the levels of trust, particularly with certain groups. And we're implementing those things. There's a whole list of them. Right. One is response rate I talked about. One is really using language and cultural competency tools to, so there's a whole bunch of them. And what I am really excited about is the next measurement and see where we were able to move the needle, but also learn where we didn't move the needle. So really then diving deeper, how do we do it? The last piece I'll say, which has just been a personal interest of mine being in the social sector, and it's not something yet we're doing with Deloitte, but I'm kind of fascinated by the potential, which is to really look at the service sector and measure using the Trust ID. Do we trust our clients? And what does it mean if we don't? We know that trust really strengthens anyone's individual ability to do and learn and perform. And so as an organization, we need to trust too. So I'll leave you with that.
I love that, Gaby. And that certainly is a twist worth exploring. And I think Trust ID does provide a platform to do that. But whether you're a service organization talking about trusting the people you provide services to, or a retailer talking about whether or not you trust the customers, that becomes an important unlock, I think, for the human experience and the relationship between an organization and all of its stakeholders. Constance, we'll give you the last word. In your mind, what's the most exciting next evolutionary step for CWE and Trust ID?
I think the most exciting step is to see what Gaby can implement based on the results. I'm really looking forward to see that laundry list be put into action. And I know, Gaby, I I saw the release of the hub coming up for entrepreneurs. So lots to look forward to there. And then I'll also just put a shout that the HICS Trust ID was our first pilot with CWE in a nonprofit context. HICS Trust ID had never been used in the outside of the commercial sector. So this project was really foundational in being able to start to think through what are all of the potential uses of the HICS Trust ID tool. So I'm really excited. Right now, I'm acting as an advisor on our first philanthropic pilot with a prominent foundation, and we will be heavily leveraging many of our lessons learned that we had discovered along the journey with CWE.
Two amazing leaders bringing joy and smiles to their high-impact work. Gaby King Morse, the CEO of Center for Women in Enterprise. Constance Gamache, Deloitte's Corporate Citizenship Lead. A true privilege.
I echo that as well. Thank you both.